It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Island of Sodor. Tram Trouble. Thomas the tank engine and Toby the steam tram are very good friends. Toby always tells Thomas when he's worried, and Thomas is always happy to help Toby. One bright morning, Thomas puffed into Isledale End. Hello, Toby. You look happy. The Fat Controller has asked me to lead the parade at the first Great Waterton Festival. Thomas was pleased for his friend. That's because you're the only steam tram on Sodor. Everyone will cheer for you. Thomas puffed quickly away. The Fat Controller was waiting for him at Great Waterton. He had 3 important jobs to do. Thomas raced into Great Waterton, fizzling fireboxes. Waiting on the rails was another steam tram. Thomas, this is Flora. She's the new steam tram on Sodor. Flora smiled her sunniest smile. Hello, Thomas. Hello. Flora is to lead the parade with Toby. Thomas gasped. Take Flora to meet Toby. Then Toby must bring Flora back here for the parade. Thomas was worried. Toby thinks he's leading the parade all by himself, thought Thomas. Now he will be very upset. I must keep Flora away from Toby until after the parade. Thomas and Flora arrived at the junction. Suddenly, an idea flew into Thomas's funnel. I will take Flora to do one of my jobs before we go to Isledale End, he chuffed to himself. By then, Toby will have left to lead the parade. Let's go to the woodyard first. It won't take long. That sounds exciting. So they raced away to the woodyard. Thomas collected a flatbed of heavy logs. Now we can meet Toby. Flora was pleased. Hooray! She peeped prettily. They set off. Toby, Toby, you must go. Hurry now to lead the show, Thomas puffed to himself. Flora and Thomas waited at the junction to Toby's shed. It looked empty. Come on, Flora. Flora pumped her pistons perkily. Suddenly, Thomas saw steam coming from Toby's shed. Cinders and ashes, he thought. Toby's still there. Toby mustn't see Flora. Flora, I've just remembered. We must go to the quarry first. Flora was surprised. If you say so, Thomas. And they puffed away. At the shunting yard, Thomas was coupled up to the stone trucks. Now we can meet Toby. That made Flora very happy. Toby, Toby, please have gone. Lead the show, be proud and strong, Thomas puffed to himself. Thomas and Flora arrived at Isledale End. This time, Thomas was sure Toby's shed was empty. Come on, Flora. Oh, no, thought Thomas. Toby's still there. Toby mustn't see Flora. Flora, we're late to pick up my load. We must go to the docks. If you say so, Thomas. And they puffed quickly away. At the docks, Thomas was coupled up to his large load to take to Great Waterton. Thomas was sure Toby would now be leading the parade. Come on, Flora. Flora's axles ached, but Thomas steamed strongly. Thomas and Flora puffed up to the junction. Then there was trouble. Flora had chuffed too far. She had run out of coal. "I'm sorry, Thomas." Flora's wheels wobbled weakly. Thomas felt bad. He knew it was his fault. Then he heard a chuff and a puff and a ring of a bell. It was Toby. "Thomas, I've been waiting for you." Who's that?" "Cinders and ashes." Toby had met Flora. Neither of them was at the parade. The Fat Controller would be very cross. Thomas couldn't have felt worse. "Flora, this is Toby. Toby, this is Flora." Toby looked very happy. Thomas was surprised. "I wanted to tell you, Thomas, that I was too scared to lead the parade all by myself, but now Flora and I can lead it together." "I thought I knew what you wanted, Toby, but I was wrong." Now Thomas had to quickly put right his mistake. "Flora, take my coal. I'll pick up more. Puff as fast as you can to Great Waterton." Toby and Flora soon puffed away. Later, Thomas chuffed into Great Waterton. The parade was ready to leave. Thomas's flatbed was uncovered. Flora gasped. She had a wonderful new tram car. Toby was pleased. Thomas watched his two friends lead the first Great Waterton parade. The children cheered. The brass band boomed. "Now I have another best friend, and she's a steam tram too." And Thomas smiled his happy. Don't go back. Thomas is a busy engine. He is very good at shunting. Thomas thinks he can shunt backwards and forwards faster than any other engine. One day, Thomas and Diesel were waiting at the quarry. The quarry manager arrived. "Thomas, I have a very important job for you. You must fill lots of trucks with stone. Henry will arrive soon to collect them." "Yes, sir." "I have an important job too. I'm sure I'll fill my trucks first." "No, you won't. I can beat a steamy any day. I'll race you to the hopper." Thomas was sure he could win the race and do his job. But Diesel wanted the race to be tricky. He had a devious idea. "We have to go backwards." "All right, I'll win." So the two engines raced away, backwards. "Steamies are fast and steamies are first," Thomas huffed to himself. Thomas was determined to win. Thomas and Diesel took separate tracks to the hopper. "I'm sure to win now," Thomas thought to himself. Thomas steamed towards the hopper. "I'm first," but Thomas couldn't see that Diesel had arrived first behind him. Thomas bashed into Diesel. Stone poured down from the hopper. Thomas was covered from funnel to footplate in dust. "Ha ha, silly slow steamy, I won the race." Thomas wanted to beat Diesel. "We'll have another race to the washdown, and this time I'll win." "Well, we still have to race backwards." So together the two engines whooshed away. Thomas and Diesel raced buffer to buffer. "Steamies are fast and steamies are first," huffed Thomas to himself. Mavis was at the washdown. She was enjoying a soapy soak, but Thomas couldn't see Mavis. He raced backwards into the washdown and biffed into Mavis, who came off the rails. "Ooh, rattling rods. Oh! Then Diesel rolled in. I won. Thomas forgot about Mavis. Thomas was enjoying being the winner. Yeah, well, we both won a race. We must have one more. Thomas was no longer thinking about his job. All right, let's race to the engine sheds. Whoever wins this race is the fastest. Diesel revved his engine. Thomas pumped his pistons. And the two engines raced quickly away, backwards. Thomas steamed into the lead. Steamies are fast and steamies are first, he huffed to himself. Thomas had to win this race, but Diesel rattled alongside him. Then there was trouble. Harry and Bert were enjoying a rest at the engine sheds, but Thomas and Diesel couldn't see them. They raced backwards towards Harry and Bert. With a crash and a bash, Thomas and Diesel smashed Harry and Bert right through the back of the engine sheds. Stones and timber flew everywhere. Bust my buffers! Oh no! Then Henry arrived. I've come to collect my train. Your train isn't ready. Then the yard manager arrived. Thomas, you have pushed Mavis off the rails, and Harry and Bert right through the back of the engine sheds. Thomas felt worse than ever. Oh no, it's all my fault. I should have done my job and not raced against Diesel. Come on, let's have one more race. No, Diesel, I have an important job to do. Thomas puffed over to Henry. I'll fill your trucks as fast as I can. Your train will soon be ready. And Thomas chuffed quickly away. Thomas felt terrible. I must work very hard to put everything right, he thought to himself. Thomas shunted the trucks under the hopper. Soon they were all filled. And Henry huffed happily away with his train. Then Thomas collected Rocky. Rocky lowered Mavis back onto the tracks. I'm sorry I bashed you. I was trying to win a race. Mavis was relieved to be back on track. Next, Thomas shunted Rocky over to the sheds. Harry and Bert were soon back on the rails. I'm sorry I biffed you. I should have done my job instead of trying to be the fastest. Then Diesel rolled in. We must clear all the trucks of broken stones. Yes, Thomas. At last, all the trucks were loaded with broken rubble from the sheds. So together, Thomas and Diesel shunted the trucks as quickly as they could. At last, all the jobs were done. We still don't know who's the fastest. Let's have another race. All right, but this time we must go forwards. So the two engines raced away to the quarry gates. And they both arrived together. Henry gets it wrong. The Sodor wishing tree is a very old tree. It's older than Edward, older than Sir Handel. It's even older than the Fat Controller. Some say it's the oldest thing on the island. All the engines and children love to make wishes whenever they see the tree. Especially Henry. He thinks the wishing tree is magical. He whistles whenever he passes. One day, the Fat Controller arrived with some very bad news. A summer storm struck Sodor last night. The wishing tree was hit by lightning. All the engines were upset. Henry was the most upset of all. Some special woodsmen are arriving at Brendam Docks. Henry, you must take them to the wishing tree right away. Henry knew this was an important job. They have to be back at Brendam Docks by tea time. That's when their boat leaves.
Yes, sir.
And Henry puffed away as fast as he could. He chuffed towards Brendam Docks. At a junction, Henry decided to take the track that passed the wishing tree. Henry arrived at the wishing tree. It wasn't standing tall anymore. Some leaves were gone and some branches were broken. Sometimes, Henry, special woodsmen have to cut trees down.
Oh, no.
Now Henry was even more upset. Henry took the track to Brendam. His boiler bubbled and his steam sighed. But then he had to stop. Toby was blocking the line. He had snapped a piston rod. Oh dear, I can't get to Brendam if the track is blocked. Then Henry had an idea. If all the tracks were blocked, no one would be able to get to the tree, he thought. Then no one would be able to cut the tree down. I'll take your trucks for you, Toby. He buffered up to Toby's truck. Toby's driver coupled Henry to the trucks. Henry pumped his pistons and chuffed back down the track to the wishing tree. Then Henry saw Thomas at a signal. He had a long line of empty trucks to take to the quarry. I'll take your trucks for you, Thomas. Thomas happily agreed. So Henry reversed onto Thomas's track, and he slowly wheeshed away. Then Henry saw Percy at a water tower. Percy had to take truckloads of empty milk churns to the farm. Percy, I'll take your trucks for you. Thank you, Henry. Percy shunted his trucks onto the main line. Henry buffered up to Percy's trucks and whooshed away. Then Henry saw Emily. She had empty trucks to take to the coaling plant. I'll take your trucks for you, Emily. Thank you, Henry. So Emily shunted her train onto the main line. And Henry coupled up. He chuffed happily away. Henry had the longest line of trucks a big engine could pull. At last, Henry puffed to the Wishing Tree Junction. He left Emily and Percy's trucks on one track. Then he shunted Thomas's trucks onto another. Finally, he shunted Toby's trucks onto the express line. All the lines to the Wishing Tree were blocked. Now nobody can get through. The Wishing Tree will be safe. At Brendam Docks, the special woodsmen were waiting. Henry hadn't arrived, so the docks manager asked Salty to take the woodsman.
Aye, yes, sir.
Salty tried to get to the Wishing Tree, but all the tracks were blocked with trucks. Henry was still feeling very happy. Then he heard Harold hovering over him. Henry, old chap, the special woodsmen can't get through to the Wishing Tree. They're the only ones that can help. Without them, the tree will have to be cut down. Oh dear, the woodsmen are here to save the Wishing Tree, not cut it down. I have made a very big mistake. Henry felt terrible. Now I must put everything right as fast as I can. And he chuffed quickly away. First, Henry took Toby's trucks to the depot. Then he took Thomas's trucks to the quarry. Next, he took Emily's trucks to the coaling plant. Finally, he took Percy's trucks of empty milk churns to the farm. At last, all the tracks were clear. Henry collected the special woodsman. Thank you, Salty. Then he wheeshed quickly away. Soon, Henry chuffed up to the wishing tree. The woodsmen were ready to start their very special work. They cleared and propped. They clipped and chopped. And Henry helped too. Soon the wishing tree was standing tall again. The wishing tree was saved. I wish the wishing tree would last forever and ever. The special woodsman cheered, and Henry smiled his biggest smile ever. The island of Sodor is surrounded by beautiful blue sea. It has fields of green and sandy yellow beaches. There are rivers, streams and lots of trees where the birds sing. There are windmills and a coal mine and docks where visitors to the island arrive. The island also has lots and lots of railway lines. Who's that puffing down the track? It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Island of Sodor. Steady Eddie. Edward is one of the oldest engines on the island of Sodor. Edward may not always be the fastest engine, but he certainly is the steadiest. And for the Fat Controller, a steady engine is a really useful engine. One morning, Edward puffed into the docks. Good morning. Then the Fat Controller arrived. The brand new brass water wheel has just arrived from the mainland. It is magnificent. It'll be displayed by the waterworks at Great Waterton. Emily, Gordon and Edward were very excited. They couldn't wait to see the magnificent water wheel. Edward, you will deliver the water wheel to Great Waterton. Edward beamed from buffer to boiler. Gordon and Emily were surprised. I've chosen you, Edward, because you are the steadiest engine. You are to take the express line. It is the smoothest and most direct way to Great Waterton. Gordon gasped. Edward was to use his express line. Cranky lowered the water wheel onto Edward's flatbed. It had a shiny brass rim that shone in the sun. Everyone looked at the magnificent water wheel. Edward the Steady is at the ready. And very slowly, Edward pushed his special out of the docks. Edward puffed up to the junction for the express line. Thomas was waiting. Bust my buffers, Edward. That's a very special. Edward was very happy. He looked ahead. If he took the express line, he couldn't stop for people to admire his magnificent water wheel. But if he took the other track, he could stop at stations and bridges and sidings. A lot of people would see his special. The signal changed. Edward didn't take the express line. Edward was having a wonderful time. He went past stations, under bridges, and past farms. Everyone cheered and waved. Edward the Steady was now Edward the Magnificent. Edward arrived at the junction. The track ahead is in need of repair. But the track ahead led to the school. Edward wanted the school children to see him, so he chuffed on towards the broken track. The track was very bumpy and jumpy. The shiny brass edge of the wheel started to cut into the ropes, but Edward didn't know. At the school, children cheered and waved. Edward wasn't looking at the red signal. Flatten my fender! Edward applied his brakes, but too late. The shiny brass edge of the water wheel cut even deeper through the ropes. Edward knew now that his long journey had made him late. Then he had an idea. I will chuff up Gordon's Hill, Edward thought. It's the fastest way to Great Waterton. And, he huffed to himself, the other engines on the hill will all see my special. Edward chuffed and huffed up Gordon's Hill. Oliver and Arthur passed him coming down. They both thought his special was magnificent. But the water wheel was very heavy. Edward huffed and puffed up the hill. At last, he reached the top. But the edges of the water wheel were cutting deeper and deeper into the ropes. Then there was trouble. With a final jolt, the ropes broke. The magnificent water wheel rolled off Edward's flatbed. For fizzling fireboxes! Gordon was further down the hill with flatbeds of scrap iron. The water wheel rolled down the hill. It bounced onto Gordon's flatbed. Now Edward's magnificent water wheel was on its way to the smelters. Edward had to get to the smelter's yard before Gordon. Edward puffed and Edward panted along every shortcut he knew. No one saw Edward pass, and no one stopped to wave. That no longer mattered to Edward. He had to save his magnificent water wheel from the smelters. Gordon puffed slowly into the smelter's yard. He pulled up outside the smelting shed. Then suddenly, there was Edward. Gordon was surprised. Edward the Steady had won his race against the fastest engine on Sodor. The magnificent water wheel was once again tied down to Edward's flatbed. Edward the Steady, once more at the ready. And his wheels clickety-clacked without a crunch or a crack, or a cheer or a clap along the way. The water wheel was put into place. It looks grand. It looks magnificent. And Edward didn't need anyone else to tell him that his had been a very special. The island of Sodor is surrounded by beautiful blue sea. It has fields of green and sandy yellow beaches. There are rivers, streams and lots of trees where the birds sing. There are windmills and a coal mine and docks where visitors to the island arrive. The island also has lots and lots of railway lines. Who's that puffing down the track? It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Island of Sodor. Thomas and the Billboard. Knapford is the biggest station on the island of Sodor. All the engines love its bustling busyness. Today was a very special day. It was Knapford Station's birthday and there was going to be a grand party. All the engines were very excited. They were to have their photograph taken. The photograph was going to be put up on a billboard. Thomas felt very proud. I've never been on a billboard before. But the photographer was having trouble fitting all the engines into the photograph. Move back a bit there, James. And you forward, Percy. Yes, that's good, that's good. Now, Diesel, can you move in? Diesel moved in. The camera flashed. Thomas didn't know that Diesel had rolled right in front of him. And neither did Diesel. Later that day, Thomas puffed into Marron Station to pick up the new billboard. He was very excited. But when Thomas saw it, he was very disappointed. Diesel's right in front of me, Thomas thought sadly. No one can see me at all. Thomas puffed towards Knapford. Diesel moved in front of me on purpose, huffed Thomas to himself. Thomas felt cross. He wasn't looking where he was going. Then there was trouble. There was a cow on the line. Thomas turned quickly into a siding just in time. He hit the buffers and the billboard flew into the lake. Thomas went to tell the photographer what had happened. Don't worry, I'll take another photograph. Tell all the engines to meet me at Tidmouth Sheds. Thomas was about to set off. Then he saw Diesel. Thomas knew he should tell Diesel about the new photograph, but Thomas was worried. What if Diesel spoils this one too, thought Thomas. So Thomas didn't tell Diesel. Soon all the engines except Diesel were back at Tidmouth. Gordon was cross. Mr. Giggles, the famous clown, is coming to the party tonight. I must collect him from the airport. I must not be late. And I have to pick up the brass band from Brendam Docks. And I have to collect the bunting and decorations from Wellsworth. OK, I'll fetch the photographer right away. Thomas was steaming to Marron. Then he saw Diesel. Diesel was puffing straight to Tidmouth. Thomas was worried. Now Diesel would find out about the new photograph. So Thomas turned onto a branch line and he raced back to Tidmouth. There's been a mistake. You'll all have to come back later. The engines were very cross. Soon they had all gone, and Diesel trundled straight by. Later, Thomas had gathered the engines again. Then Thomas went to Marron to collect the photographer. Just as the photographer was climbing on board, Thomas saw Diesel. Now Diesel would see the photographer and he would find out about the new photograph. So Thomas wheeshed lots of steam. It billowed from his boiler and filled the whole station. So Diesel didn't see the photographer and he trundled straight by. The steam has made my camera wet. I'm sorry, sir. We'll have to wait for it to dry. Tell the engines to come back later to Tidmouth. So all the engines came back later, instead of doing their jobs. At last the photographer was ready. No one had noticed Diesel wasn't there. Thomas was very relieved. But just then, Diesel oiled round the bend. Diesel was surprised to see all the engines. He screeched to a halt. Rolls of bunting went everywhere. No one told me there was another photograph. But I asked Thomas to tell everyone. All the engines looked at Thomas. Thomas felt terrible. The Fat Controller was very cross. Gordon, you were meant to pick up Mr. Giggles, the famous clown. Emily, you were meant to pick up the brass band. And James, you were meant to pick up the bunting and decorations. None of you arrived, so Diesel had to do all your jobs. And now he is late to do his own work. Thomas was very upset. It's all my fault, sir. I didn't want Diesel to know about the new photograph. In the last one, he moved right in front of me, on purpose. I did not. The photographer told me to move. I did. Perhaps you rolled too far. Thomas knew then he'd made a mistake. I'm sorry, Diesel. I was wrong to think you did it on purpose. And I'm very sorry for causing all this trouble, sir. Soon, all the engines were lined up. The new photograph was taken. Sir, if I do all Diesel's jobs, can he collect the new billboard? That's a wonderful idea, Thomas. Diesel agreed. For the rest of the day, Thomas worked hard. He did all Diesel's jobs. And Diesel picked up the new billboard, just in time for the celebrations. It was a wonderful party. There were clowns and a brass band. Diesel and Thomas agreed that the new billboard was the best billboard they'd ever seen. James works it out. James is a bright red engine. He always likes to look his best, to do his best, and to show other engines he knows best too. It was winter on the Island of Sodor. Thomas, Stanley and James were working at the yards. They were shunting trains to take to Great Waterton. They had to arrive on time. Stanley watched James shunting his trucks. They wiggled and giggled. James quickly biffed and bashed his trucks into line. You're the best biffer I've ever seen. Hey, that was nothing. See how easily I can shunt heavy Hector? James collected Hector. Stanley watched as James shunted Hector to the back of his train. Snow started to fall. I'm ready to leave. I'll see you both at Great Waterton. It's starting to snow, James. You should check the weather with the yard manager. James didn't want to be told what to do by a truck, especially in front of Thomas and Stanley. I'll decide what we do. The weather doesn't bother me. So James buffered up to his train and steamed slowly out of the yards. James puffed through the countryside. The snow was getting heavier. James stopped at a signal. Harold swooshed in. There's bad weather all over the island. It's very hard to see the tracks. Then we better go through Henry's tunnel. James sniffed. He didn't want to be told what to do by a truck, especially in front of Harold. I'll decide what we do. We'll take the track through Shen Valley. It's the quickest way. The signal changed and James puffed away, pushing his train. James arrived at the Shen Valley Junction. Now the snow was very thick. It made it hard for James to see ahead. James puffed on to the wrong track. James thought he was steaming through Shen Valley, but he wasn't. He was steaming towards the snowy hills. James saw Edward in a siding. He was wearing his snowplough. "The ice has made the line ahead very slippery. It will be hard to shunt your train up the hill." James was surprised he was in the hills. "I must have taken the wrong track," he thought. "I've had to clear snow from lots of lines." James was worried. "We need Edward's help. He could couple up to the front of the train." But James didn't want to be told what to do by a truck, especially in front of Edward. "I'll decide what we do. I can manage on my own." So James puffed slowly towards the hill. James huffed and puffed. He steamed and strained. His face was now as red as his boiler. James arrived at the top of the hill. He was very pleased. "Now I can put fast down the other side," he thought. Then there was trouble. Hector could see a snowslide had blocked the line. Hector knew that if James slowed down at the bottom, they would get stuck in the drift. "Onwards, onwards, don't slow down!" But James didn't want to be told what to do, especially by a truck. "I'll decide what we do," he huffed to himself. So James applied his brakes. The train smashed straight into the snow, and it stuck. James couldn't make his delivery. He felt very bad.
James is silly, James is slow, James has got us stuck in snow.
James wished he had checked with the yard manager about the weather. He wished he hadn't tried to find his way through Shen Valley, and he wished he had asked Edward to be his front engine. "Now I know Hector was trying to help me." The trucks giggled. "Quiet! Please, Hector, how can I deliver my train on time?" Hector was happy to help. "I'm a very heavy truck. We must race down the hill at full speed, then we will biff the train right through the snow." "What a good idea!" So Hector was uncoupled from the train. James wheezed and wheezed. At last, he had hauled Hector back to the top of the hill. "Go, James, go!" Hector and James raced faster and faster down the hill. There was a mighty biff, and Hector pushed the train right through the snow. "We did it! Well done, Hector!" Hector was pleased. Thomas and Stanley were already at Great Waterton. James, Hector and the train arrived. "You made it. We were worried." "I wasn't worried. Hector helped me all the way." Thomas and Stanley looked surprised. "You can always rely on a good truck." Hector was happy to be a good truck, and James was happy to have a new friend. Excellent Emily. It was autumn on the Island of Sodor. There had been a terrible storm. Lots of tracks were blocked, and lots of engines had broken down. But Emily made it to Brendam Docks with her load. "Well done. You're the only engine to arrive on time. You are excellent, Emily." That made Emily very proud. Excellent Emily, she thought. I like that. The Fat Controller had a very important job for Emily. "Jeremy cannot land at the airport, and my mother is on board. The storm has blown some metal tanks across the runway. You must collect Trevor from Farmer McCall's. Take him to the airport so that he can clear the runway. Then Jeremy can land." Oh, yes, sir. Excellent Emily can do it. Then Murdoch puffed alongside Emily. I'm going to Farmer McCall's too. Lots of lines are flooded. Take the Wellsworth track. I'm not going on that track. It's much quicker to go through the forest. I'm excellent Emily. I can make it through. So Emily puffed through the forest. But soon she was up to her axles in water. Nothing will stop me. Excellent Emily will find a way through. So she puffed on through the water. It was hard work. At last, Emily chuffed out of the flood. But now she was late. Thomas was waiting at the junction. There's a fallen tree. It's blocking the tracks. Harvey's coming to clear it. I'm excellent Emily. I don't need Harvey to clear the tracks for me. And she puffed proudly away. Emily chuffed up to the fallen tree. I'll easily push this out of my way, she huffed to herself. Emily pushed as hard as she could. But the tree didn't roll out of the way. It stayed in front of Emily. Now Emily had to push the tree up a hill. It was very hard work, and Emily was getting later and later. At last, Emily came to the top of the hill. The tree rolled away, and Emily raced down the other side. Emily met Duck at a junction. Trevor's waiting for you. Don't worry, I'll be there soon. Some of the tracks ahead are very muddy. If you get stuck in the mud, it's going to take you even longer. I'm excellent Emily, and I know which tracks to choose. Duck was worried. Emily raced through the villages. She rattled through the valleys. I'm nearly there, Emily thought. Emily steamed round the final bend and straight into a big puddle of mud. I'll puff through this, thought Emily. Then the track started to sink. Emily was stuck. She didn't feel like excellent Emily anymore. Oh no, now I'll never get Trevor to the airport. Further up the track, Emily saw Murdoch. Murdoch's already there, she thought to herself. I should have listened to Murdoch. I should have taken the Wellsworth track. Now she needed Murdoch's help. Emily blew her whistle as loud as she could. Murdoch puffed over. I'm very sorry, Murdoch. You were right. Please, will you pull me out of the mud? Of course, Emily. Soon Murdoch was chained up to Emily. With a huff and a chuff, he pulled her out of the mud. Thank you so much, Murdoch. Emily puffed up to Farmer McCall's. Trevor was waiting. I must take you to the airport right away, Trevor. Emily pumped her pistons. Then she stopped. I know what I have to do, Emily thought. Murdoch, which tracks would you take to the airport? The tracks on Gordon's Hill are still being cleared. You should take the valley route instead. Thank you, Murdoch. And she puffed away. Emily puffed happily along the valley track. Murdoch was right, she thought. Then Emily saw a telegraph pole across the track in front of her. She was going to push it out of the way. Then she remembered what Thomas had said. I'd better wait for Harvey, she huffed to herself. Soon Harvey cleared the track and Emily was on her way again. Emily pulled up at a junction. Ahead, she saw a shortcut to the airport. That track's muddy. Emily remembered what Duck had said about muddy tracks. I don't want to get stuck again, thought Emily. I'll take the longer track. Soon Emily arrived at the airport. Trevor cleared the runway just in time. Jeremy landed smoothly and safely. The Fat Controller was delighted to see his mother. Well done, excellent Emily. You made it in time. That's because everyone helped me, sir. All of your engines are excellent engines.